So hello, we are very, very happy to have you all here. It's a great pleasure for us to host this workshop online after this European gathering, the participation that we had in Strasbourg during 3 days, where we had many people. And we are very happy to have you all here. So now we are having the online sessions of the European gathering of participation. And this is the second workshop that we are having. And we are very happy to have you. So this session is going to be completely in English, and I'm going to let Lena and Leonor present their workshop. They are coming from Understanding Europe, and I wish you a very pleasant workshop.
Thank you, Anouk, very kind. Thank you for the introduction. I will try and share my screen with you. Can everyone see it? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. So welcome also from our side to this workshop called How to Create Your Own Inclusive Participation Format. We are Lena and Leonor. We work at the Schwarzkopf Foundation in Berlin on the project Understanding Europe. I'm Lena. I've been a volunteer in the European Youth Parliament and Understanding Europe for more than 10 years now, and currently I have the pleasure of leading the wonderful team of Understanding Europe here at the Schwarzkopf Foundation in Berlin. And with me today is Leonor.
So I am currently working as the European Solidarity Corps volunteer with Understanding Europe here at the Schwarzkopf Foundation. Before that, I was a network member of the Understanding Europe volunteering network in Portugal for a few years, and I was one of the people responsible for implementing the participation formats we did in 2022.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the Schwarzkopf Foundation. So this is the umbrella organization here in Berlin that we work for. We're called Schwarzkopf Foundation Young Europe. Our mission is to bring young people together and empower them, give them a voice, and encourage their participation in society and politics. And with that mission, we organize different events with decision makers and young people. And we provide a series of seminars for students and pupils. And we host 3 large networks at the Schwarzkopf Foundation. One of them, the European Youth Parliament and the Young Islam Conference. And the third is where Leon and I are working, is Understanding Europe. Apart from the program lines, we also award prizes like the Young European of the Year or the Schwarzkopf Europe Award. And also we have a travel grants program where young people can travel Europe with a question and can discover Europe on a certain topic. And if you want to look a bit deeper into what the Schwarzkopf Foundation does, you can see our Instagram page linked at the bottom to look into it a bit deeper.
The Understand Europe project specifically is the educational network of the foundation, which is active in 12 countries, and you can see them on the map on the right there. Our main activity, the focus of our activity, is the crash courses we do in schools, mainly high schools, but sometimes we go to other types of schools as well. And we give crash courses in 5 big topics: Europe, media, participation, climate justice, and social justice. And you can also find us on Instagram if you're curious about the work we do. You can also follow the individual countries if you are based in one of these countries that are part of the network and you're curious about the work they're doing nationally. The participation formats specifically, the idea came because these crash courses we do in schools, they end after 4 hours, and usually with the end of the crash course also ends our interaction with the students. So we wanted the opportunity to create more hands-on participation with these students and create the space, the opportunity, provide resources for them to maybe feel like they're doing a little more. these participation formats were implemented in 5 different countries: Austria, Armenia, Romania, Germany, and Portugal, where I was involved. And they touched on very different topics, from gender equality to smart cities, and used a lot of different methods that we'll also make available for you if you're curious about reading in detail about how they happened and what was involved in making them happen.
Thank you, Leonore. I forgot to say this, but if you have any questions about any of what we're saying, please raise your hand and or just unmute yourselves or write in the chat, and we are happy to answer your questions or give you more context about things you're curious about. We work in this program, so we know everything, but if you have questions or some things are unclear, we're happy to go into depth in certain aspects that you're curious about. So the workshop that we're offering is about inclusive participation formats, and I want to explain a little bit why. So we saw the need to organize these formats on a local level, like Leonore just explained, to organize formats where young people, students, pupils in schools can actually go beyond learning and go beyond understanding how the structures work, but actually practicing participation. And we enabled that. And what's important for us in understanding Europe is the concept of intersectionality when it comes to participation. And this is a concept that was introduced by Kimberly Crenshaw, and it means that there are different systems of inequality that collide or that work together. So, for example, gender, race, sexual orientation, disability, class, and other forms of discrimination, they can intersect to create unique dynamics and effects. And so an inclusive format, if we want to plan a participation format or an event where we encourage participation in society and politics, we need to be aware of the different dimensions of discrimination and how they intersect in order to really organize an inclusive format. And for example, certain marginalized groups are systematically excluded from democratic practices and representation. For example, people who do not have an EU passport but have been living in the EU for 20 years are not allowed to vote in the EU elections, as you know. There are different different forms of discrimination that can both apply to one single person, and that will have an effect on this person's needs to access events. And this is what's important to us, to keep this in mind. And this is why we organized this workshop, to really go through who the target groups are, why it's important for everyone to participate, and how this can look like. So now we're a bit curious to hear who you are and why you are here and why you decided to join this workshop. And for this, we decided to use an interactive tool called Mentimeter. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I will share my screen and show you. So I will go on present. Perfect, now you should be able to see it, and there's the instructions on how to join this. So either you have a mobile device and you can scan the QR code, or you go to the website menti.com and enter the code that it says on the screen to be able to join this method. Can I see how many people joined? Maybe. Thank you, Anouk, for sharing the code.
Maybe
okay, I will just go to the first slide, maybe.
Yeah.
So the first question we have is, why did you decide to attend this workshop? And if everything runs smoothly, you should now be able to see this question, and you should be able to enter a few words to let us know what your motivation is, what you're hoping to learn from this workshop, why you decided to come. So we can maybe also tailor our workshop to your needs. That's great. I see one submission, curiosity, already. Perfect. Public engagement, example of the formats, we will definitely get into that. New tools. Oh, there's a research group on this. I'm curious to learn more later. How to mobilize audience. Impact generation. Cool. Connecting to people. Building capacity, representative, maybe cases. I think it stops letting you enter words at some point. Nice, okay. New tools and curiosity are the biggest words. That means they've been entered the most often. Here's a message in the chat. Can you see it?
Yes, I think building up CA is building up citizens assemblies.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. So maybe I can already react to this directly. So we didn't organize an assembly per se. The formats that we organized in the past were really open to what the students needed and what the students wanted to do. We met them in their schools, and then we decided with them together what kind of format they wanted to create, but we will get into this also later.
Yes.
Cool, then I suggest we move on to the next slide, because what I'm also curious about, or what we are curious about, is what topics you're working on. And this is important because we will need an example topic for a practice topic for our exercise later, where we will design an inclusive participation format. So we're curious to hear what topics you're working on.
So if you're planning to organize a participation format, what topics you would tackle? So justice, rule of law, human rights.
Wow, there's a lot coming. Cool. Urban planning, neurodiversity. Wow. Public policy, media justice, renewable energy, ethics of engagement. Oh, cool. Democratic Repair Cafe. That sounds great. Okay. There's a lot coming.
Yes, a lot of different topics.
Democracy, engaging citizens, environment, district council, media justice, rule of law, library, citizens assemblies, renewable energy, young people engagement, us too, that's nice. General public policy.
Media is also in there.
Yeah. Cool. I think we can go with several of these for later, right?
Yes.
I think urban planning would be a nice example, or also human rights, I think we could work with.
Yeah. Do you in the call have any preferences? Urban planning, human rights. We can use reactions. Maybe you can put a like for urban planning and a heart for human rights. Let's see if we can. Okay, there's one like for urban planning. Do you know how to use the reactions on the Zoom?
Maybe we can also first explain the method.
Yes,
And then...
let's do that. Okay.
Okay, then I will stop sharing my screen and you will share yours.
Yes.
Thank you for your participation in this.
Too many tabs. Okay. So I should be able to share my screen. No.
Perfect.
Okay, can you see it? No.
Now we can see it, yes.
Okay, so what we're going to be doing is using two planning methods in parallel. So we're going to be using the iceberg model to understand the topic better and the stakeholder map. So for the iceberg model, I think it's a very well-known metaphor. So what we're going to be looking at is what's underlying the issue, the topic we're working on. So there is the event, what's happening above the water, but we need to look at what's underneath that. So what are the trends that have been created over time, the patterns that exist, the underlying structures that keep these patterns going, and the assumptions, beliefs, values that keep this system in place and keep this issue, this problem, a problem. And in parallel, we're also going to be mapping our stakeholders. What this is about is basically trying to figure out who is out there that we can get involved and that can help us, and how exactly they can help us. I think this is one of the steps that, at least for me when I was starting out, was the most confusing, but it's really important to find out what kind of support is out there and how we can get it involved, how they can help us, what is their role in the issue. And we're going to be mapping them to get a clearer picture in 2 dimensions. So in terms of power/influence and in terms of interest. So for example, over here, it's upper left corner, we would have low power but high interest. I think for most individual citizens and small organizations, this is where we fall, because there is interest. People want to be involved in being part of the solution, but individual citizens are not decision makers. So the influence level is reduced. High power and high interests are the people, the entities that we usually definitely want to be supporting us and whose attention we want to be getting. Low interest, high power are maybe the stakeholders we want to try to get on our side. So their interest is low, but maybe we would like to make it a little higher, so they lend us some of that influence. And then low power and low interest are usually the stakeholders that tend to be not as relevant to us, unless for some reason there is interest in raising their either influence or interest level. So the idea here is that we choose a topic and we try to do this exercise together. So we choose a topic and we try to identify what is underneath it, what are the patterns, the underlying structures, the beliefs keeping it in place, and who are the stakeholders involved. So, any thoughts about the topic? Should we maybe go with urban planning, since it was the only vote?
I think urban planning is concrete enough to do this exercise with.
Because the idea here is also to, a lot of the time, these topics and a lot of the topics you added tend to be broad, and really getting to the concrete things that are keeping the problem a problem helps us get a better idea of what needs to be done and specifically how to engage people. So urban planning would be here, the top of our iceberg. So this is where we need your participation also and your help. can you identify or start brainstorming some of the underlying structures? What is the problem with urban planning?
Do you mean like in a general aspect? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble to really comprehend how we're supposed to chip in here. Like, what kind of, could you maybe give us an example of what we're supposed to give you as inputs?
Sure. Specifically about urban, so you said generally, we can start with the general and start making it concrete. So specifically, what are the problems within urban planning? I also don't know who added this topic.
So maybe a problem with urban planning is that the decision power lies with the city governments and not with the people who are using it. I don't know who works in urban planning. One of you said they would, so
Yeah, it was me.
perfect. Thank you. Help us out. What are the problems?
Well, as you said, well, the thing is, it's between. I'm sorry because my English is not like, I'm not sure I will be able to communicate as well as if I was native. But yeah, the power is held in the hands, sure, of sometimes the city council and this time of people, but there's also like, I don't know how to phrase that, but it's more like big landlords who have lots of who hold the land better than like the city council. Sometimes you have like private interest involved, in which the public power can or cannot put an end to, but sometimes you just have to go with the flow. And if a private constructor, that's not really the word, I'm really sorry, wants to implement it, they will, even though there are regulations. So it's not only about like the public power that it's invested, it's like there is lots of private interests that are led by economic, you want to make profits better than to really care about what is the community and the people who are already living here, what they need, etc., etc. So there's like kind of gentrification, putting people who are living there away in order to make, I don't know, like commercial centers and then these kind of things. Sorry if I'm mumbling. If anyone wants to
That
interrupt
was
me.
actually perfect because the English was great. And
We hear you
not
very
only
well.
did you
Yeah.
give us several examples of concrete aspects of the issue, but you also named several stakeholders. So we can also start putting them. So you mentioned construction companies, you mentioned private landlords, there are decision makers, also the public ones. I would also ask you to maybe, if you're using the Zoom editing tool, to maybe not do that so it doesn't get in the way of the image. So I see some check marks randomly showing up. Okay, so you mentioned private landlords, construction companies, there are the people in public office making the decisions. I assume there's also the people living in the urban spaces. So all of these four would be stakeholders. Where would you place them? For example, the construction companies in terms of power and in terms of interest in the issue.
There is also a few elements in the chat: reliance on expert, costly, time-consuming, many different interests from people using the area, from Emma Lebel and Andrea Geffra.
Thank
Yes,
you.
reliance on experts, costly, time-consuming, many different interests among people using the area. It's great.
Thank you for your contributions.
Yes. So can I also add it? Yeah. So where would you put, for example, the Construction companies. Would you say high or low interest in the issue?
Hi.
And in terms of power,
I guess it depends, but I would say hi.
okay. Also feel free to speak up or write in the chat if you disagree. There were also, I think, the people in public institutions working there, the private landlords, and the people living in the urban spaces. Where would the private landlords land, would you say? Also maybe high power.
I would put the landlords on high power and high influence because they are mostly driving that. The construction companies, I would put it on high interest, but medium high influence because they influence it only on the part of the what can be constructed and not probably not on the decision what has to be built.
Okay, thank you.
Someone said in the chat that we need to place the stakeholder that's public authority.
Perfect. So public authority, where would they go?
Hi is the suggestion in the chat.
Okay, so put them here with the private landlords and keep each other company. And then we would have
The inhabitants maybe, but also there was a point made in the chat by Andre, rightly so, that also not all of the inhabitants have the same interests.
okay, that's perfect. We can create two.
I mean,
In terms of
the interest itself, it's high on the inhabitants, but I think the power is quite medium to more to the low part. And because of the very different interests, they are mostly overpowered by private landlords and public authorities.
I was trying to see if I could. No. I wanted to make a long post-it that could fit in different levels. Okay, can you think of maybe a stakeholder that would have low interests and high power? Someone who would fit in this quadrant? There is usually a stakeholder that is present in almost all issues because they're the ones involved in the sharing of information with the public.
The media.
The media, yeah. Would you say the interest is high or low in this topic? I guess it might depend also on the type of medium. So I drop it here. Does it bother someone? Let's see if you're more vocal, if you disagree.
I think media is quite a difficult part because it depends on which readers they target. They might have a high interest and high power, or they might only have high interest and low power, and whatever depending on where they're working in which areas. So probably we'll have to have two or even three stickers with media to share around.
That's perfect. And maybe in all of your urban environments, you can identify which of the media are the ones that represent maybe also which interests, and therefore the interests are high or low.
Please correct me if I'm misplacing the stickers.
There's another role that was mentioned, the experts, that we haven't yet placed on the stakeholder map. Where would you say the experts go?
I would put the experts, if they are neutral, then they should be placed in the middle, but depends really again on the experts.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, but the experts are, I think the interest might be high, but medium on power and influence.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just on the yellow mark where high stands, and that's basically it for the experts.
Yeah, it depends if they are being consulted, if they're all working on the project, what are their opinions actually on the particular said project that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Mhm. Any other stakeholders you can think of? Or are we happy with how this map looks, at least just for the sake of exemplifying?
You can always have like some kind of associations. It's a lot more like how people would gather to talk about the projects and those kind of things. They
Yeah.
have a specific interest linked to the project, for example.
Maybe civil society in general?
Yeah, but a more organized one, I would say.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And you can still talk about, and then you have the interest can be pretty high on this subject, for example, I would say. The influence can be like medium, I would say also. But then you have unorganized civil society, and then sometimes it's the same as the inhabitants. Sometimes they do care, and sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other ideas? Let me check the chat.
I mean, if you go to low interest and low power, then probably inhabitants that are not linked to that part that is planned currently, the area that is planned. So
Okay, so inhabitants of other areas.
The thing is with urban planning that you can be a user without being necessarily an inhabitant. You can always work there. You can always have your leisure there, etc., etc. So
That's very true.
I think that's not only about inhabitants. The inhabitants have a very specific interest because of it, because that's their I'm sorry, I have lost the word, but that's where they spend most of their like free time, if I can say so.
Yeah.
So would you agree with adding users of the area to the inhabitants, or do you think they should be their own sticker?
I think they should be their own sticker because sometimes you have different interests when you're living there and when you're only here by daytime, for example. But maybe that's too specific. You tell me.
So ideally, when you're doing this on your own time, the more specific, the better. Here, I think we have a good map already. Does anyone have any questions, anything to add? Are you happy with how this looks just for the sake of exemplifying the method, or? Okay, perfect. So now we should go back to the presentation.
Yes, I am ready to share my screen in a second. So yeah, this method is basically, you can use it at the start if you're planning a format, if you want to involve citizens or people. It's always good to really use this method and to see who's involved and who has what kind of interests, to also be aware of the different positions and roles in the room when you bring these people together. Okay.
Okay, so going back to the beginning, to that world cloud we did. So the idea is that you understood the problem and the underlying structures, you reflected and mapped out the stakeholders. Now we need to think about the target group. So who is our target group? Are we targeting the users of the area? Are we targeting the people that don't use or live in the area? The media, the public authority? Are we targeting the private entities? Depending on the target group, different types of formats, different types of methods will be more or less valuable. So when we think about our target group, it's also important to keep in mind the concept that Lena introduced of intersectionality, and think about the different types of discrimination while we think about what are the needs of our target group, what kind of format would speak to them and address those needs. And a good way to get an idea of the specific needs of a specific group, be it in terms of location, awareness structures, time. For example, if our target group are people who work or study in the normal work hours, if we have a training at 4 o'clock, it might be too early for them. They might be working. In terms of location, is it accessible or not? These needs analyses do not need to be formal. Just any kind of method allows us to get an idea of who is the group we're targeting, what do they need. And I think now, if you stop sharing, I can. Yes. Go back to Miro, but a different board, assuming I can click on it. Oh no, right, okay.
Yes. So now I think that we have identified the problems below the bigger topic, or what the issues that we want to tackle, as well as the target group, where we have had some reflections about the target group and the different interests and power in place. We can think about, what do I actually want to do? How do I want people to participate? And what kind of format is maybe the fitting one for the topic and for the stakeholders and the target group that I actually want to engage with. So we created this map of different actions that could be a way for you to go and engage with people. And we grouped them in a few groups, but I'm sure there are also actions that you have on your mind that aren't there yet. But for example, you could identify the need for more policy research. And I also read earlier that there are some researchers here. So if it is about a certain area in a city that you want to work on, then you could also engage people through research. You could have a request a report, you could monitor or ask researchers to monitor certain movements or things in the area, and you can request academic research, or researchers can also look at the area. This is one way of engaging participation in the specific topic, urban planning. Another process or another action could be legislation. So through legislative tools that are already there, you can also engage in urban planning and generate participation in urban planning. For example, a group of citizens that have a really strong opinion could start a petition, and they could you could support them in getting together and then starting a petition and setting things up. Or they can also do it on their own if they know how to. Or there could also be a public consultation. Decision makers could also open their doors and ears and start listening to the concerns that people have from that neighborhood, for example. Then actions related to stakeholders, you can form coalitions. So different civil society groups, for example, could form coalitions, also potentially with other stakeholders that were involved, civil society and inhabitants, or civil society and users, maybe civil society and offices that are there in the area, or also the media could support. And there can also be a field trip. So you can organize a field trip to get people involved or specific stakeholders involved. or you can also organize a field trip to certain stakeholders. You can organize a field trip for citizens and inhabitants to the public authority to understand how the processes of decision making work on their end. So this could be a type of participation format. So people could also, of course, become policymakers or engage with policymakers. So if there's a citizen who's really upset with their surrounding and really feels like they want to change something, they can run for office in their local council. And they could become policymaker and get a seat in the policymaking process. But also groups of citizens or interest groups, or also landlords or landowners or media could write an open letter to policymakers and get attention for their points of view. Or you could meet policymakers as part of a field trip also, or as part of a public consultation. So these are all can be connected, but policymakers, of course, have a high power, as we saw on the graph. You can mobilize and organize events. So there could be conferences, there could be stands on maybe public squares in the area. There could be protests that could be organized or stands. You can organize trainings or workshops or seminars to mobilize, to inform, to connect. There's different aims with regards to these kinds of actions. And then you can engage the citizens directly. You can organize social media campaigns. You can organize trainings, and you can organize experiments or flash mobs or situations that cause a lot of attention in the public sphere. So these are only a few examples of actions that you could take to become active. And now I've already seen in the Mentimeter survey that you have or you are organizing other forms of participation. Maybe you want to share ideas of what other participation formats or actions could be.
As one part came from my side, the citizen assembly would be also one possible part in the urban area. And you could have also, in that case, if you stay with the urban planning part, we don't make a democratic repair cafe, but an urban planning repair cafe. So where you have different settings where you can get the people to think about what causes what in when you change the road in one direction or another direction, or putting trees there, putting parks there, putting parking spaces there, and so on and so on. So this one part with the repair cafes that will help people really understand what they are doing and what they are thinking about, and in which direction their part is going.
Can you explain a little bit more what the concept of the repair cafe is? I've never heard about it.
Repair cafes and just some sort of just there put the map on the table and say that's the topic, and you have then different things that you can go with. I mean, standard one would be okay that the participant themselves think about a question in that topic. And when they have, when all have put their question, then one question is taken and is answered with more questions to see where it really drives and what is behind that. So that nothing is forgotten in one area. And from that on, you can do different things. Let's say you can see, okay, we know that what has to be changed then after we change this, what changes then afterwards, and so on and so on. But it really depends then on what you're trying to do with the repair cafe. Is it just brainstorming, or is it something you want to really achieve? It really depends then on the direction you're driving it.
Okay, that sounds very cool. Would you say it's an action in the area of citizen engagement, or is it even more with mobilization?
Both. It can be both. Actually, it's I think it's mostly well situated in the training part. No? And it's in that case citizen engagement in events and mobilization. So it's in between somewhere. And the good thing is you can invite also stakeholders, legislation people, policy people, policy researchers. You can have everybody there and think together. That's basically a small format of a citizen assembly.
Nice. That sounds really good, and less also formalized than a citizen assembly, right?
Yes, exactly, because you're throwing in questions and all the time it goes forth and back. It's not too much training. It's just to pick up what people think, what people where their knowledge is currently on which level.
Very cool. That sounds great. Thank you for sharing. Are there other ideas for formats that you've heard of or maybe participated at or that you do as part of your work that are not shown on this map yet? I can maybe share an example from Brussels that I've seen on a study trip that we did to Brussels as a preparation to the participation formats. We met with a group of artists who actually worked in urban planning, and they tried to transform a particular square that was very important to many groups, but not really used ideally. And they were using artistic forms. They printed little postcards and handed them to people on the square that were using it and asked them to draw or write down what was important to them or their vision about the square. And then together, these postcards were collected, and then there were consultation processes. And then together there was an artwork created with the citizens, and everybody was invited to contribute to it. So it was an artistic format that brought the neighborhood together, and people could contribute their different needs. And it was a very low threshold event because everybody who was at the square and had time was able to participate without knowing specific terms or without following a certain formal structure of decision making. It was really just coming together and talking and drawing in the end. And they painted a huge wall at the square together with the neighborhood that now everybody remembers as a communicative or community effort and getting in touch with everyone in the neighborhood in the square.
I think that in the case of urban planning, you can also put all kind of urban walks, where when you want to ask people about a specific place, you just have to like go on a walk around the neighborhood in order to be able to gather both what they feel about the place, what are their different senses, gather from the environment, how they usually use it, how they would like it to resemble. Yeah, I don't know if you should use it in citizen engagement or more of events and mobilization, but it's you would have oh no, that's true. I didn't see the stakeholders one.
But actually, maybe you're right. I will put it wherever you want it.
Well,
I will put it in between here then.
Okay. I didn't pay attention to the right hand corner. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't worry.
So yeah, that's it. In the case of urban planning, in order to consult people on their what is and what could be, it's pretty often used.
Yeah. That's nice. I can imagine also actually next to the walks, it could be nice to also share some kind of stories or storytelling from different users. There's, I'm sure, also children or younger people who use the spaces differently. So everybody can share maybe their stories and their also old stories of how the neighborhood used to look or what people maybe how they're emotionally attached to it. So maybe storytelling could also be a format.
Yeah, precisely.
I see justice action, respect environmental laws in the chat. Thank you so much. That's a very good contribution. And I think it, we don't have it in here yet at all, but I would put it in the legislative process. Is that where you also see it? But of course, if there's something wrong and there you can take legal action. Especially in the field of environment, there's a lot of things that are not respecting respecting laws and people's rights, coming back to the human rights topic also. Are there any other formats that you... Yes.
Yeah, I would say also something in between the citizen engagement and mobilization. It could be use of digital tools for participation. I'm not sure if I missed something or not, but I think it can be very empowering for citizens because, I mean, of course, it doesn't discard the barrier of to participate, but in certain cases or in for some people, it can be easier to vote on certain proposals or read about them actually, or being even informed about some, I don't know, even about the urban infrastructure, as we talked about it before. So I think can be useful to from the public authority to be able to propose or to put up on these digital platforms or yeah, digital platforms to put up something that they want to discuss with citizens, and then the citizens can give their feedback or propose their solutions or give their opinion, etc. So I think nowadays it could be a strong tool that could help with the citizen engagement, yeah, on the city level or even regional, etc. So
that's a very good idea. Thank you, Martin, for bringing this up. And it's a very important idea. I think also not just external platforms, but also probably on social media and through the media and comment sections of media. There's a lot of engagement actually with topics going on. But there are also other more specific digital tools. Do you know any, or do you have experience with any?
I mean, I don't want to do publicity and advertisement for our company, but our organization, so Make.org, I think we collaborated at some point with Décider, ensemble. We have platforms that allows citizens to actually participate. So, for instance, you can have a dialogue platform that allows you to, as the name says, as it is quite self-explanatory. You can have a dialogue between the authority and citizens who can either propose or comment on different propositions, etc., and can't discuss it even among themselves if it's relevant for the cause. So.
Thank you so much. I think this brings me a little bit to the point that we wanted to make with this whole exercise, is now that if we think about inclusive participation formats and we think about different kind of target groups that we have, what kind of formats could work for them. And then there are people who maybe, as Martin said, are unable to leave the house so much or don't have so much time. And then they can participate online at their own pace and to whatever extent they can and want to. But then we can maybe also envision different target groups in the area. If we're talking about urban planning as our example again, maybe there are elderly people in the neighborhood who aren't so good with the digital setup. So do you think there are activities here that would suit or target elderly people and engage them in your activities?
I'm sorry, could you repeat, please?
I'm just trying to play with different kind of target groups that we maybe want to address. And if you think about people that don't have so much time, for example, because they work a lot and they have family to take care of, a digital tool might maybe be a good solution. But then there's maybe elderly people for whom the digital tool isn't such a feasible option because it's too complex for them to use and they're not so literate in the digital world. Do you have ideas for other formats, or maybe there are already here on the map that could speak to or address directly elderly people?
The repair cafes is exactly also for elderly people because they can contribute, can come and go whenever they like, whenever they have. Other parts would be going to them and asking them what we did in Vorarlberg once with the Stimmungsbarometer, where we just knocked on the door and said, "Hey, cities planning few infrastructure projects. What do you think about that?" And bring that all together on a map, so that or then on the other part you have the old care or old meeting or meeting point for old people and so on. Old people associations, there are quite a lot, and even religious associations and religions buildings that might help to get to them and give them possibilities on engagement and empowering.
Cool, thank you. That's great. I also think that maybe public consultations or sometimes also seminars or workshops could address elderly people specifically. And now just to play it, so you know how to use it, how about families? Do you see opportunities for families to participate in your action with any of these opportunities we have? I can maybe imagine them at the community formats, at the artistic formats. Yes, Martin.
I'm sorry, just to go back on the elderly people and digital platforms. I think from the numbers we sometimes see, it's they're not totally excluded from the participation through digital platforms. Like it's maybe an idea, and like probably a majority of them are not super literate, as you say, with the digital tools. But I would say on the other hand, they also have quite a lot of time, so they can read about some issues, read articles, read what the city is actually proposing, and then if they're targeted because they're also present on the social media, for instance through Facebook. I mean, we all the young people left Facebook, but the elderly people and their grandparents stayed there for some reasons. They can also be quite active through these digital platforms. So it's I wouldn't put the dividing line between like young people do the digital and elderly no. But I mean, yeah, of course, it is a bit more complicated with the digital literacy. But I just wanted to make this clear that it's not like 100% truth that the elderly people would not necessarily. Yeah, but I'm sorry for cutting you on the family's participation.
No, don't worry about it. It's a fair point that you made. And it's also one that I tried to make earlier. It's always individual cases, right? And people are discriminated on like one or two or maybe even three levels, and still they're individuals and they have individual ways of dealing with their surroundings and the opportunities that they have. So I think it's really important that you either really strongly define who your target group is, or really also think about different levels of discrimination that can come together when you plan your format, and to make sure to anticipate also the needs of the people that you want to involve. As Leonor said, for example, part-time people who work part-time, who have children to take care of, can then the children come to your event or action? So to really just keep in mind that there are different needs of your target groups, and also that your participation action maybe isn't just one event, but could maybe be a combination of more of the actions that we now laid out, to really reach different people and different groups with different formats, and try to meet everyone with the needs that they have in their realities.
I think you have most of formats here written down, but if you want to appeal for the families, for example, it's always about which tools you're going to use. It's going to be like more ludic. It's always when you go towards people, do you have, for example, if you want children to express themselves too, do they have the tools in order to do so? Do you like are you going to use like some maps, some maybe construction games, I don't know how to call them, and these kind of things. It's always how you will give the tools for people to express themselves. So there's the formats, but there's also the concrete tools that you're going to use.
Yeah, that's very true. The methodology and the facilitation of the formats also plays a role. And that's important no matter what kind of format or action you decide to take. Cool. Are there any other questions? I think there are maybe different formats that we haven't added, and now we focused on urban planning. So I think if we did the whole exercise on another topic, maybe we would also see some other formats come up, because it's also different depending on the topics that there are. But do you have any questions on the methods or on these formats or actions, or is there something you would like to add still to any of these?
If I may, it's just maybe that I don't know how to translate it in my own language, but what are stunts and how is it used? Like I can see in events and mobilization.
I think it's like a flash mob or like some public activity.
Okay.
I mean, on the other side, if we look into the OECD report from 2020 about new formats of engagement and people getting involved, you find there a lot of different other formats in small with small groups, with larger groups. So that could be another point that you go and dive deeper into that area.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, well, there are like plenty of different ways to do a public consultation. There are different ways to do a workshop. I think we can try to go in extreme details, but that would be pretty long. So I'm not sure if you want us to do exactly that, or if we have the general knowledge in here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also curious if the needs, some of you said that you're interested in engaging people, if this was helpful, if this helped you envision or visualize different kinds of ways of engaging people, or if there's something you're still missing, or this isn't a fit to whatever your topic is, then we now have still some time to look into it. Or I'm happy to go into depth into one of the formats that you were specifically good at doing.
If I may take the word again, I don't want to overrule or give take too much away time for others. But as I'm going now into elections in Vienna for
Yes.
city and the district councils, I will definitely use repair cafes, stands, and whatever to show the people that with new engagement possibilities, we have better ways in engaging the people in the city, in the districts, and getting them working together. I mean, there is also in Vienna a part that is or an organization that is called Heimspiel. For the German speakings, they will know what that means, but for the others, this translates into home game. And this is where they try to engage the neighborhood in small areas, and that start with urban gardening, urban planning, taking whatever they can in their certain area without even asking for permissions from politicians, and without really being troubled by the politicians or police or whatever. So that's one other part that can work for them.
That's nice, yeah. I think elections are also an interesting moment to mobilize people and to engage them on, I mean, many topics that are a topic of the elections, right? So it's not just about their immediate surroundings, but about Vienna in general.
We also have a comment in the chat saying start actions by or with disabled citizens, inclusive building, greenways, and move/events on them. Administrations was not strategy on those 2002/2018.
Yeah. I think you're in a public cafe and you can't use the microphone. So I will maybe elaborate a bit. I think that's a great idea, and I think it's also very important to think about disabled participants or citizens, particularly because it's usually hard for them to participate in formats if they're not strategically planned exactly that way to accommodate them. And I think here digital tools again are a great way, but digital tools alone don't generate the feeling of community or togetherness or exchange that is also helpful to when you mobilize. So then it's really important to also think about the needs of these people to get them to their formats. There's another comment there answering it. Feel free to speak up, otherwise I will read it for you. Okay, I will read it. So for these types of actions, it's essential to address 3 things: before, during, and after. These steps correspond to the key phases: preparation, execution, and follow-up. Now it's necessary to adapt the activities to the needs of the targeted individuals or legal entities. That's very true. So also in the way you then actually implement your event, of course, you need to plan it ahead and then really think through the implementation of the format that you're doing, as well as the follow-up and what's needed. And especially also evaluate if it worked for everyone or if you reached everyone who you actually wanted to reach with it. Thank you for this comment.
And I guess since you mentioned the after, in the slide we showed during the target groups, we mentioned needs analysis. So this is for the before, where you collect the needs to take them into account when you're planning the action. And I guess for the after, feedback analysis, where you get the chance to actually collect feedback from the people who participated. Did they feel included? Did they feel something was missing? Is also an important part of this stage, so you can improve for next time.
Yes. Okay, I think if there's nothing else on this model, then we would go back to our PowerPoint and we have some space also for questions and feedback from you. But we are also happy to share some of our materials with you. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so there's a QR code. Oh no, I'm taking you through the whole thing again. Sorry, here. So there's a QR code here that you can scan where you can find the PowerPoint that we used, but also a guide that explains a bit more on how to plan your action more specifically. It also shows this graph again that we worked on in a different format and goes a bit more into depth into the different formats that we mentioned or that were talked about. And you can also find our participation format guide there. So back in 2022, when we with the Understanding Europe implemented these participation formats, we did it with pupils, so with young people, that's our target group. And the formats looked really different in the 5 different countries where we went. In Austria, for example, we worked with young apprentices who wanted to learn more about their workers' rights as apprentices, and the format was targeted really on them and their needs and what they wanted to learn, and we invited stakeholders that were relevant in this topic. In Germany, we went into a school who wanted to change the immediate surroundings in their school, so they bought a bookshelf for a book exchange, and they did some work in the garden. They created a bee or insect hotel in their school. So we really tried to work with the needs of the target group. And the formats looked really different in the 5 countries, and in the reports that we linked also in this folder, you can see and read a bit more about the 5 different formats that happened and how they happened and what was needed for them to be implemented, in case this is an interesting format for you to also use. And what we will also upload there is the screenshots from the Mentimeter and from the Miro boards, so you can come back to them also if these were useful to you in your work. Yeah, and now if you have any questions or any feedback, we're really happy to hear.
I just wanted to add something about for the mobilization of people. Like sometimes I think we also can think about having an indemnization for the people, like paying them or helping them to come, like having, for example, you can change the format to make like children participate, but you also can help the mom to come by having like someone taking care of the children while you go and participate, or just giving them an indemnization. Like in France, we just have a city like in which Poitiers, who had finally have the authorization from the region to give money to her participants, and that was not that was quite a fight for the city, but she finally wins, and I think it's a very great win for the city and for the participation, because now they can help people to come by giving them money, and this is also something that can help sometimes people to come when they don't want to, because it's also kind of a work.
Of course, yeah. Thank you, Anouk, for sharing that. I was involved a little bit in the background in civil society during the conference on the future of Europe, which was also, probably most of you heard about it, a huge citizens participation initiative on an EU level. And there were also citizens selected for citizen panels that happened on, I think, on weekends consecutively, or like regular weekends, not right after each other. And there also, I think people got paid, which is great, of course, but then there were still other questions coming up, like childcare and all kinds of other needs that also need to be met, or should ideally be thought of ahead of time. But this was, of course, a huge scope and a great first trial. But it's good also to think about the resources that people have or need to be able to participate.
I agree.
Thank you for adding this. Cool. I think we don't need to keep you in the Zoom room for longer than necessary. If you have any questions or feedback, we would love to hear, and please just feel free to speak. And otherwise, you can find our contact information there. If you have a participation format that you implement with the help of our guides, let us know. We're happy to connect with you again. You can follow our Instagram pages. We have Understanding Europe, which is our youth network, the educational network, where we work in. And if you in any capacity have see the need to engage with young people and want us to facilitate workshops for young people for you, and that's what we do in 12 countries all over Europe, as Leonor said, on 5 different topics. So also connect with Understanding Europe to book courses for free, or have us engage with young people around you to encourage them to participate. And also the Schwarzkopf Stiftung has great formats. We're currently also looking into engaging young people on the topic of security, European-wide, which is the hot topic at the moment. So there's a lot of things that you can follow and tag along and see if it's interesting for you to connect to. And we would love to hear from you if you are implementing any formats, and if you have questions and think it would be nice to connect with us before that, please do. We're here to connect with you also. Thank you for taking the time and for actively engaging and for participating. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you too, Lena and Leonor, for having this workshop. We are very, very happy to, that we can share this and to have this great moment to exchange on inclusive formats. So thank you, everyone, for attending this workshop online for the 9th gathering of participation. It's